Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Eliza, everyone. So thank you for joining our BPI chat today. I'm your host, Alexandria, and I hope everyone is safe and lifted during this time. So the purpose of this series is to share the experiences and the insights of members of the international affairs community, and hopefully to inspire the next generation to explore opportunities in the field. So the thoughts and views of our guest speakers are their own, and we're currently live streaming this, and the talk will be posted to our IGTV and our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you haven't already, please follow Black Professionals in International Affairs on Instagram, as well as our guest speaker, whose handle can be found on the flyer, their flyer on our page. And lastly, we encourage viewers to chime in below in the thread with any questions or comments that you may have. So without further ado, I will introduce our guest speaker for today. Eliza Gueye is a young professional working in international development. She's an experienced proposal recruiter where she staffs key personnel for development and humanitarian global programs funded by the U.S. government. Also, she has worked for donors such as DFID, the Gates Foundation, and Apple. She currently is working for Save the Children. So thank you, Eliza, so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So can you start off by sharing how the COVID-19 situation is affecting the work that you do and your experiences?
Absolutely. So I think that it's actually been busier. Not only is the U.S. government asking us to incorporate COVID response into our already existing programs and global programs, which is causing for maybe a little bit more recruitment on my side. And they are also asking that we incorporate it into our current programs and actually sending out money for COVID response now. So it's picked up a little bit. We are not only pursuing our current programs, but also new programs in response to COVID. So
Great, thank you for sharing. Could you tell us a little more about your, academic, your professional journey and what got you to where you are now?
Sure. So I attended Kent State University, where I studied psychology and global health. From there, I really thought that I wanted to kind of get onto the technical side of global health. And I knew that international development was here in DC. I also had my elder brother here who assured me that he would be a support and encouraged me to make the move. So I came to DC, where I actually started off as a grassroots campaigner, one of those people who are on the corner, like, please sign up and give us money. So I did that for a little bit. And then I actually ended up temping within the talent acquisition team with Management Sciences for Health, which is a global health organization here in actually Arlington. So I started there in talent acquisition, and it really was something that I never thought that I would fall into. I definitely wanted to kind of go the more technical route, but I figured a foot in the door was a foot in the door. And then I fell in love with talent acquisition and recruitment and haven't looked back since.
So in line with the topic for this discussion is putting your best foot forward, what recruiters are actually looking for in applicants. What are you all looking for? How do people get hired?
Yes.
Skills, what professional experiences? Is there this like prototype applicant you all are looking for? Does that vary?
Yeah, I would say there is no prototype applicant. I mean, of course, within international development, we look for someone who at least can express interest, especially on some of those entry-level positions. So someone who may have done something like AmeriCorps or Peace Corps, or has traveled abroad, did study abroad during school, or has a background in one of the technical areas as far as education goes. From there, it's really just showing, your personality, why you're driven, what the motivation is. International development, especially for some of those more entry-level positions, for someone looking to get into it, is really a lot of program management, a lot of coordinating and administrative tasks. So attention to detail, being able to, check and check again, having good coordination skills, but then also showing like what your results are and what your value add to the organization may be. And that may even just be cultural. Maybe you're from a different country, or maybe you have those experiences and you've seen the work that we've done and it motivated you so much to apply that you feel like you can really bring a cultural value add to the organization. I think that those are things that we look for as well.
Thank you. Say that there's emphasis, or could you just speak to how, I'm just going to say it politically because I want this to be holistic for folks and younger folks who are looking to kind of get into this space, in terms of international experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had folks who have asked me for recommendations or, for assistance in job-related things. And the advice that I had to give a few people was to explore international experiences, or at least international exposure. Is that also found in the international development job hunting space that you found?
Yes, I would say so. Even take a different language. There's plenty of organizations and societies that you can join. You can join the Society for International Development. They have a young professionals group. Humentum has a group that you can take classes. You can sit in on roundtables. You can really get that exposure and start to network with people who may have opportunities for you. Again, with the volunteering or doing internships, I would definitely suggest to, at least when you're taking those classes and you're a part of those associations, you're showing that you're interested and that you're putting the best foot forward to get the exposure. And then we can help you get the rest of the way. But you have to show at least some sort of drive or attempt to get into the industry.
Thank you for all the people who have joined in. I see we have some new folks who came in. We're here with Eliza today, who is in talent acquisition for Save the Children with experience through international development. So feel free to drop any questions or comments that you have in the chat below. So my next question to you: what sparked your interest in the field and in international development?
Yeah, so as a Senegalese American, I have always kind of had an interest in the diaspora and connecting to, my people. And I've also always had an interest in health and wellness. So when I went to school, I wanted to try to find things that would incorporate both of those. So psychology, working with people and really trying to understand people and their actions, and then the global health as far as like looking at the global capture of health and programming and what at least the US has to offer in that arena. um, I honestly think it really was just kind of like a natural fit for me being in talent acquisition. I am clearly a people person. I enjoy talking to people and kind of seeing what motivates them. I guess that's a psychology background of understanding what's really driving them. So I really fell into it, honestly. And it's really random how like life happens, but I think that my cultural background as well as my personal interests in health and wellness kind of drove me in this direction.
I know someone asked me 5 years ago, like today, did I think that I would be doing what I'm doing today 5 years ago? I feel like absolutely not.
Yeah.
That resonates with me as well. What do you like most about your work, and what do you consider to be the most challenging things about your work?
Yeah, so I really love connecting with people. I mean, hiring these key personnel, I mean, I'm dealing with very senior professionals in the technical worlds that they are across the globe. And it's really, really interesting to hear about what they've done and how they may contribute to the work moving forward. So I think my favorite part is really interacting with the people, helping them reach their goals as far as getting hired for the different positions, and then, working with them throughout the project to hire support staff to support them in the best way possible. The most difficult thing for me sometimes is being at this level and having to, which I like a mid-level professional, and having to manage up, knowing that I'm not a key, I contribute to the decision making, but it's not my decision to make on who we hire, and really trying to steer the boat in a productive way can sometimes be challenging when there's so many other stakeholders, along with having to keep in mind what the bigger donor is looking for.
Mm. Can you speak to how diversity could be considered an asset, in terms of one's professional journey, especially in international development?
I think that diversity definitely plays a key role, especially for a United States government. They have this journey to self-reliance, which is really focusing on building local capacity and really building up sustainability for people to really carry on the work themselves and not necessarily need the US government to be swooping in. So if you have that diverse background, or if you feel like you connect to different groups of people, or you know how to, block out those unconscious bias and really make those connections, that's key to the work that we're doing right now, and one of the key factors that we're looking for in our professionals. Everyone's on the move to kind of, how diverse can we be? How can we use this diversity to reach bigger populations and be more sustainable? So it's definitely important.
Yeah, and I ask that because I've heard some young people say, is my background and my diversity, is that working against me in this space? And honestly, I think that that is someone's strongest attribute in a way, because it brings a very unique perspective, different experiences and a different voice in a room that is very necessary, to growth throughout international affairs, but especially in development.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So thank you everyone for joining. I see we have a few new folks who are coming on. We're here with Eliza, who works in talent acquisition with Save the Children. So if you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the thread below. So my next question, could you tell us more about your experience with DFID, with the Gates Foundation, and with Apple? And can you tell folks what DFID is who may not know?
So DFID is the USAID version only for the UK. So it is their development funding mechanism. So with those different donors, I have worked for international NGOs in obtaining their funds to implement projects that they feel are important on the ground. So specifically with DFID, with PACT, we have a UK entity, or they have a UK entity. I'm no longer with PACT. Sometimes it's hard to forget to say we, but they have a UK entity which focuses primarily on DFID funding. So for them, I recruited for several positions within the Horn of Africa, focusing on food security and livelihoods and agriculture. I also worked to develop a training for our staff who mainly are used to focusing on USG programs, and then how to apply that knowledge to working on DFID programs to secure more funding. For Apple, I also worked on recruiting for projects that they fund to retain healthy minerals, so like tin and selenium, which goes into the phones that they produce. They want to make sure that those are clean minerals that they're collecting. They don't want to have like child labor or gender-based violence associated with the products that they're pulling from the ground. So I worked to help find employees for that, as well as for the Gates Foundations. I mean, they are a global health funding mechanism that I've recruited several times in finding key personnel to lead global health programs for them, particularly around orphan and vulnerable children, HIV/AIDS, and collaboration with like PEPFAR, which is the president's funding mechanism for HIV/AIDS programming here in the United States.
Got you. Thank you for breaking all that down, because I'm just learning as well. So.
Yes.
And for folks who had any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the thread. So what advice do you have in terms of interviewing? So like actually going into the interview, what are things that candidates could do to improve their, competitiveness for obtaining, getting the job?
Yeah. So all the time I see people come into interviews and they're kind of like robots in a way. You've made it past the screening. We've brought you in because we believe that you have the skills to complete the work. So we may go ahead and try to ask some questions that may target some holes in your resume or get a deeper understanding of your level of knowledge to those skills. But we also kind of want to know who you are and what your story is. I was actually watching Becoming yesterday, and it's funny because I was writing notes for this, and Michelle Obama said something about being your story and not a stat. And I think it is important to try to remember that when you're doing interviews, because I mean, we know you have the knowledge, definitely build upon those technical skills, but work is a huge part of everybody's lives. And you'll be surprised on how many comments come back about people's personalities, demeanors, how they may fit into the team.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have people who are perfectly qualified who may not get the job because they just didn't present themselves in a way where someone wouldn't mind going to be with you every single day for probably 70%, and Lord knows international development, really 90% of our lives, we're going to be Skyping and emailing and talking back and forth, and you really want to build a connection on a human level.
And if you're in the room, that means that it's you're at least qualified by your resume.
Yeah.
The advice I've been given is, highlight the things you've done, but really that's your time to show more about you, your character, your personality, your work style.
Yeah.
And really can contribute to that team because they already I would assume that the hiring team sees you as capable based on your resume. So
exactly.
You fit into the culture of the organization and things like that.
Exactly. And of course, there may be different specifics that we may ask you. It can get very technical, and I'm not a technical expert in any one area. I'm building my knowledge as I go, but they may have like technical questions that they can ask you, but they're also looking to see how you may manage a team. How are you going to be able to manage up? How are you, really selling your story and what motivates you to be here? I think that international development is one of those cool spaces where people actually care about you as a person, as an individual, and realize that you're touching our beneficiaries. So, what does Save the Children want our beneficiaries and the people we're helping to think of us? And compassion, skills like that really are something that we look for.
Do you have any advice on what if you're an applicant and you're asked a question or interviewed and asked a question and you don't know the answer to that question? What would be something because as you just discussed, and what makes me ask this is you mentioned that the technical folks will come in and ask you questions, and I'm curious, what strategies would you take, or do you have for what you just don't know an answer?
So if it's something that you don't know, you can always phrase it as, this is why I'm interested in this position, because it would be an area of growth for me. So I'm hoping to gain these skills and grow in that area while I'm here. And just kind of say what you do know. Don't lie or like overgo, because then we notice that as well. But if you're looking for an area of growth to someone like me, that makes me feel like, okay, so they're going to come into the position, they're going to be excited about the position, they're going to be excited to grow, we're going to be able to teach them things, and they're going to stay here, which means I don't have to recruit for this position in 2 years when you quit because you're bored or you're not growing. So if you don't know something, there's nothing wrong with that. No one knows everything. Just say that's a place where you're looking to grow.
Right. Don't try to fake it and say, "Oh, yeah, I know about it."
Fake it till you make it does not apply in the interview room. Okay.
So we have a question here. How can I save my interview if I mess up?
Again, it's fine to be human. It's fine to say, can I just have a moment to gather my thoughts, to calm down? I'm a little nervous. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone is human. We totally understand that it will not be counted as a mark against you. Take a moment, gather your thoughts, and then continue to move forward. If you misspoke, say, I'm sorry I misspoke, I want to recant that, or whatever it may be. I mean, it's better than not being able to express what you truly feel and the knowledge that you have. So just take a breather and keep going. It'll be okay. Or you can always write a follow-up to your recruiter with more information if you felt like you forgot to say something. You can always, when you send your thank you notes, which you should always send within 24 hours of your interview, you should recant some of that information and elaborate if needed.
And I know for me personally, as I kind of went through the interview process, I'm with the Department of Defense now, but I realized I would get really flustered or, I don't want to say disheveled, so I'll just say flustered when I didn't feel prepared going in.
Mm-hmm.
So doing the background research, the company research, you're trying to contact and research about the specific office that I would be going into. And I know this sounds silly, but revisiting your own resume and going through reminding yourself, what have you done that connects with the work that is being done. A little pro tip, I like to take a career portfolio in. I know some people are like, career portfolio, but you can Google or YouTube what a career portfolio is. That was advice that I was given from someone who said, for folks who may be kind of nervous to do interviews or nervous for an in-person interview, you have a nice portfolio that explains some of the projects or experiences or, resume things like that you've had that you can refer to, because when you're nervous, you might miss something,
Absolutely.
important thing or something that may, that you had direct experience with, but you're distracted because, they're hurling questions at you, or, it's a panel you're in front of, so you're trying to answer everybody. And you can refer back to that career portfolio to say, I do have experience about that. Do you mind if I show you my portfolio that highlights some of my work? And that makes you look, professional. That makes you look on point too.
Absolutely.
But that's a really good, these are really good questions, because I wish I would have had some guidance around these topics, when I was in undergrad or in college, as I began to enter these spaces. Because before you go in, you think, you got it all together, you know what to do and all of that. And then you actually get into the room on some of these things, on some of these interviews, and it can be intimidating. So, when you get in there, take a seat, take a deep breath, collect yourself first. Don't feel like you have to jump right in. Take your time, warm up a little bit. Hi, how are you all doing today? Thank you for this opportunity to be here. Right.
Absolutely.
Let me see. We have another question here. Is it better to send an email or a handwritten note as a thank you?
So I think a handwritten note is always nice and fabulous. And especially when you're thinking about executives and like senior leadership who are a little bit up there in age, they definitely connect to that handwritten note. So I think that if you have the time and the ability, write that handwritten note, send it in, that will definitely score you points of like, oh, how thoughtful, again, creating that connection. I will say, in the lieu of time, always send a follow-up, at least to your recruiter, saying, thank you for your time. I'm sending these notes, so forth and so on, so that if you never know what conversations may be happening behind closed doors. So if it takes, 3 days for your letter to get there, unless you're going to deliver it to the office, you always want to follow up via email.
You can also leave the thank you note with the secretary, like have it written, or maybe have a small thank you note written, and then you write in the person's name and then leave it with the secretary right as you're walking out. If you want to make sure, if you don't know if you'll have a direct contact with the person or the individuals that interviewed you too. So that's a good question. There's another one here. Is there a different way to think about interviewing during COVID-19 with everyone working so differently?
Absolutely. Most of these interviews are happening virtually. And, it can be even more so intimidating when you're on a video Zoom call and you know that there's no distractions in the room. Everyone is staring directly at you. So I think that it's key to prepare more, to make sure that your feelings are in check and you're not, feeling flustered or anything like that. I'll also say that, it's important to speak slowly and articulately and make sure that everyone can understand what you're saying. Make sure that you allot extra time, join the call early so you can kind of troubleshoot any technology issues. Make sure that your background is clean, any background noise is not there. You just really want to, it's a little bit more as far as the prep side right now with the COVID-19. And yeah, a lot of these virtual interviews are just awkward. So just prepare for the weirdness, because you never know, someone else may have technology problems and not be able to hear you or something. So just practice patience and put your best foot forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. I'm just scanning to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And for those who are joining in a little bit later, we're here with Eliza, who is talent acquisition with Save the Children. So if you have questions related to, how to get recruited for in the international development space, or resume or interviews, cover letters, things like that, please put that in the thread below. As a recruiter, how long of a resume is too long?
So I will say for your typical job, if you don't have more than 5 years experience, or honestly even 10 years of experience, 1 page is fine. Beyond that, I would say like 2 pages. Now, I think there is a difference between a resume and a curriculum vitae, a CV. So when I think of a resume, I think of what is targeted and actually relevant to this job. Therefore, it should not be longer than a page or 2, depending on the level of position that you are applying for. If you would like to attach your CV, which encompasses everything and should be more fleshed out and detailed, I mean, you would be surprised at the length of CVs that I have seen. Granted, for when you're applying for some of those proposal roles, I say that more is better. I have to, as one of my tasks, I guess, is rewrite CVs for submission to the donor. So I actually prefer those 15-page, 10-page CVs, because then I can take out and move through what I need. But for the purposes of applying for jobs here in the U.S., non-project positions, I think a page is fine, especially for a young professional. If you have more than 10 years of experience, I could see how you could get into that second page. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you come down to like listing projects that you've done, things like that,
Yeah.
Would you say that it's for the international development phase? Say that it's because in the defense sector they love a dense resume. They want to see it all. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious with international development, is it more beneficial or practical? When you see resumes, are they generally one page? Are they generally inclusive of or focused on chronological experience? Like, would you prefer to see chronological experience, what the person did in exact chronological order over the past few years? Or do you prefer to see a resume that has maybe experience that is direct to international development, direct to the project they're working on, but it may not be in chronological experience?
So I do prefer to see the chronological experience, because I enjoy to see your journey,
Right.
as well as kind of like what your win themes are. And I feel like every job may not be, you may not have been in Ethiopia, saving lives, but there may be skills that are transferable that I can pick value from. If you don't have a lot to say about a position, or you feel like it's not of great value to the role that you're applying to, you can always list it on your CV, throw a sentence or two of what your overall role was, and then move on and pack as much details in the things that you feel are relevant. If I have questions and I'm interested, then I will call you and we will set up a screening and we'll discuss that further. So I think it's important I like to see the chronological journey, but I have seen where people use graphics or charts or different things to kind of put those keywords right in front of you. So it's really, I think maybe because I'm a young recruiter, and I'm not 100% sold on those, 1-page requirements. And yeah, I'm actually reading your resume and I'm going to see through what I want and what I need. And if you have it, you have it. And if you don't, you don't. So it's probably better to put more information there, so I can see, even if I am doing keyword searches, see what value you bring to the position than trying to just meet a page requirement or keep it short.
Because how I think about it, other folks who are applying for the job, you submitted your 1 page, but there's going to be other people who are submitting their 2 page.
Yeah.
And